Hello, welcome back. As promised, I am back today to share about step one of my 8 steps for building a more trauma-informed school. I'm Melissa from AK Educational Consulting, and I'm so glad that you have joined me for this series. If you're not sure what this series is about, you can go back to the last video and get sort of a high-level overview of each of the 8 steps that we're going to talk about. Today, we're going to focus in just on step one, which you can see on your screen in front of you is educate all staff members on trauma. Trauma-informed practices, the impact of trauma on learning, behavior, things like that. And we're going to talk about who do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? How do we get this done? This is where you have to start. It is critical that this is your first step because you need to make sure that everybody on your staff, and by everybody, I mean everybody who is in contact with kids on a regular basis. That would include your cafeteria, your custodial staff, front office staff, bus drivers, coaches, if they're not regular teachers in your building. Anybody who is interacting with your kids regularly needs to be part of this training. So make sure that you're thinking outside the box of teachers and instructional assistants when you think about who you're including, because it needs to be everyone. Why? Because all of those people at some point during the day or during the week interact with your students. And they need to understand just as well as the teachers do what is really happening with our kids when they experience stress or trauma. And that is the what part of this. So what do we need to train them on? There are lots and lots and lots of topics, right? But where you should start, I think, is sort of the basics. What is trauma? What are these adverse childhood experiences that we hear about, or ACEs? What are the characteristics of trauma that we need to be looking out for? And how do we differentiate between trauma and things like ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder, or some of these other things that our kids come with, right? So how can we kind of tell the difference? How do we collect some of this information that we need to figure out what's going on with our kids? It's also important that we talk about the fact that not all of our kids are living traumatic experiences, but some of them are living just in a lot of stress, right? And that can impact them in many the same ways. So it's really important that we talk about all of those things and then really get into how does that stress or trauma impact our students' brains and their bodies? And then what is its impact on their learning, their behavior? These are the pieces that we really need to understand, because I guarantee you, as your teachers learn these things, they're going to have a very different understanding of kids' behaviors than they did prior to having trainings like this. Then you can really get into some of that, what are some strategies that we can do to improve our culture, whether that's at a school level or at a classroom level. What can we do in the cafeteria, on the buses, to be more trauma informed? That's where you need to begin. Everybody needs to go in having a baseline understanding of what it means. What is trauma? What does it mean to be trauma informed, right? We all hear this word all the time, but what does it really mean? So why is this important? Again, I mentioned this because we are going to be better able to support our kids in all the ways, socially, emotionally, mentally, academically, behaviorally, all of those things, if we understand them better and what's going on inside of them. Our kids are not coming to school to learn if they are living in chaos or in trauma at home, right? They are not coming ready to learn their multiplication facts or take on this new phonic sound. We have so many things that we need to get past and get in place for these kids before we can get to the point where they are able to learn whatever it is we are trying to teach them. So that is sort of the why behind this. And I know my video, I don't know why this has happened in the last 2 videos, right? But we're just going to make it work. But I'm back. The when piece of this, when do we need to start this? Well, as soon as you can, right? Whether that means the start of second semester or the beginning of next school year, whenever you can fit it in time-wise, budget-wise, all of those logistical pieces that you have to play around with, right? We need to start this as soon as possible. Why? Because of what I just mentioned a second ago. We can't get our kids to a place where they are ready to learn until we get them through some of this other stuff and until we have a better understanding of these things that our kids are going through. So we're not going to see the academic gains. We're not going to see behavioral changes until we put these things in place, because those kids with their stressed brains cannot and will not learn. They literally can't. And when I teach this, I teach the science behind why is that? What's going on in their brain that's preventing them from learning all of these things that we want them to learn? There are A through Z things that we need to get past before we can get them to learn. And I know just as well as you know that the ultimate goal of our schools is for our kids to learn things, right? So we need to get our teachers trained and get started on this process as soon as we can, because the quicker we do that, the quicker we will get to the point where our kids are able to learn and we can start moving that needle. So I hope that you learned a lot about this very first step, which seems very big, and it is. And I hope that you will join me back here next time for the next video when we go into step 2. And like I said, if you missed out on the very first overview video, then you can go back and watch that. And I thank you for joining me, and I hope that I'll see you back here next time.